Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Songwriters on Process podcast. My name is Benno Papari, and since 2010, I've run the Songwriters on Process website, where you can find more than 200 conversations with songwriters about the creative process. I'm not here to talk about tour stories, band drama, how a band got its name, or favorite foods. My goal is to treat songwriters as writers, plain and simple. This is an intelligent conversation about the writing process between two writers. And today's interview is with Katie Pruitt and Molly Tuttle. We did this interview back in February of 2021. The video version of this is also on the Songwriters on Process YouTube channel, so check it out there. So again, this is a reposting of an interview that we did about a year ago, but we did this in the thick, as you can tell by the date, in the thick of the first winter of the pandemic. And that's one of the themes, that I'm certainly seeing with these interviews that I did about a year ago that I'm now putting up as the podcast. The impact that, that this long stretch of not touring and of being isolated has had on creativity. I think it's unavoidable when you are a songwriter and you write about experiences and you don't have those experiences and you're not touring. So that's unavoidable, I think, in any of these conversations. But what I found interesting, one common theme with both of these, both Pruitt and Tuttle, is how many song ideas they get during dreams. Dreams are an incredibly fruitful time for both of them. Both of them have been awoken in the middle of the night by incredible melodies running through their head. And as you'll also hear, one of those daytime melodies actually caused a car crash. Actually, obviously, she wasn't dreaming when she was driving, but one of those melodies actually caused a car crash for one of them. And so this was a fun conversation. Just a little bit of background. Katie Pruitt's incredible debut album, Expectations, came out in 2020 on Rounder Records. It is great. Molly Tuttle released her debut album, When You're Ready, on Compass Records in 2019. And in 2017, Tuttle was the first woman to win the International Bluegrass Music Association's Guitar Player of the Year award. She also won it in 2018. And in 2018, she was also named the Americana Music Association's Instrumentalist of the Year. So with that, here is my interview with Katie Pruitt and Molly Tuttle. Is it hard to write, Katie, I guess, with heavy emotional weight, whether it's during the past year or in general? Is there a limit where you just go, yeah, it's too hard to write during times like this?
Absolutely. I think that as I've gotten older, I've realized that I'm better at writing songs when I've let myself process an emotion, or whether that be that doesn't mean I can't be creative or I can't write, journal. I what I do a lot is you mentioned all the heavy political stuff. Obviously the pandemic has been traumatic. I mean, I think you need to kind of let yourself feel those hard emotions, kind of process it, journal or whatever. I journal personally, or write poetry or whatever. But not necessarily write songs, because I feel like when I'm being pulled around by my emotions, I can't really effectively piece a song together. It's, yeah. I feel like I have to kind of process it. And then the best writing kind of happens when I'm already past feeling that emotion, and I can then sort of reflect back and remember and recall kind of what it was like without being yanked around by sadness or anxiety or fear or whatever it may be. Cause that's hard. I mean, it's hard to feel, to actually be productive when you're experiencing something like that. So that's my personal experience with it. I often have to work through it first and then reflect back and then write if I can.
So how do you know when you're ready? How do you know? Is there a time when you say, I process this, now I'm going to write about it? How do you know when that time has come?
That's a good question. I don't know. I guess you don't always know, but for me, the journaling is really helpful. I've said that 5 times, but because, I find that I can, when I'm reading back, through my journal entries, I'll write it and then I'll go back and read it and remember it. And then, yeah, like listen to music or like go watch a movie, and then I'll kind of pick up my guitar and see what happens.
Molly, how about you? What is it like to write in times of, I guess, intense emotional weight?
Yeah, I think when I guess last March when quarantine started, I felt like it was hard to really write because I was, like Katie said, kind of going through all these emotions, and it was just really stressful to have such a huge dramatic shift in the whole world and in my life. And so I think I was putting so much pressure on myself to be productive, and like I have all this time, like I better make the best use of it. But yeah, just giving myself time to process. And then the other thing that I've kind of shifted into from there is continuing to write songs amidst like feeling upset about things, but not putting pressure to write about what's happening. Like maybe writing a happy song or writing a song about, um, like, I don't know, one of my favorite places that I've been or stuff that kind of uplifts me instead of putting pressure to be like, okay, I'm a deep artist who's going to process everything in the world and all my tough feelings. Like maybe I'll just write a fun song today because I don't really want to um, dig into these feelings that I haven't had time to process yet. So that's helped me continue to make new songs. And I've also found that like this year I've really enjoyed listening to kind of lighthearted music more than in the past. So I think
That's
there's a lot of
interesting.
that.
So your way of kind of processing or dealing with this to just write about the opposite emotion, right? Enough for the sad stuff. I'm going to write happier songs.
To some extent, I think mainly, I guess I've just kind of tried to keep writing and whatever comes out, whether I'm in the mood to just write something that's going to uplift me. And then maybe months later, I'll write something about how I was feeling during the first months of the pandemic, but kind of letting whatever wants to come out and not putting pressure to write what's happening in the moment if I'm feeling upset about something, because it can be overwhelming then. And sometimes
Sure.
that deters me from sitting down in the first place if I'm like, okay, I have to tackle this huge
I
emotion
mean,
I'm feeling.
that's such a daunting task to take
Yeah.
on. Like you're so right. You don't always have to write about the moment, you know.
Mhm.
That's really awesome.
So you mentioned, Katie, you mentioned journaling a couple. Journaling was all I always like to talk about journaling. I found that songwriters have two camps: those that journal, actually probably three: those that journal every day, those that don't journal but wish they did, and those that don't journal and have no desire to ever start. So is journaling a regular part? I guess this is, do you write every day in some fashion? And what is that journaling? Are those journals there just as a way? Are those song ideas, or just talk about the journaling process?
Yeah, no, journals to me the journaling is are not song ideas at all. They're just
Oh, okay.
like me talking to like it's like a diary entry, you know. It's like yeah, just basically me talking to myself in the you know, writing down kind of what's going on in life or how I'm feeling or anything really. And that's why I love it. And I don't necessarily do it every day. I sort of do it maybe like I don't know when I'm trying to process something is typically when I'll pick it up to start writing. But yeah, I mean, I love it because there isn't like a particular thing I have to write about or like you just can kind of say whatever you're feeling and it's that kind of loosens me up to like when I pick up the guitar, I don't have like um I don't know restrictions on myself. I feel like I maybe write the best stuff when I'm just like I'm just saying something random and I'm not afraid to say it even if it's stupid. Like you know that's kind of how I feel like when I'm journaling is even if emotion is like unrealistic or kind of like I know I'm being over dramatic or whatever. Um, it's that vulnerability with yourself, just to kind of say exactly what's on your mind anyone without caring about it, you know, or judging yourself for it.
Do you ever go back to those journals, or I would imagine though, that journaling could be a way to say, maybe this is best expressed in song. Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, um, I definitely journaled a lot kind of during the time when like I had come up to my parents and there was this probably like 2 year period where they struggled with it. So that was a big journaling time for
Yeah.
me. And I mean, I don't know if I necessarily like pulled lyrics from the journal, but I definitely pulled like emotions from the journal of like, Yeah, I mean, I think, but I don't really go back and read journal entries all the time. I just, it's just mainly for me to get out in the moment, and then I'll remember that emotion later when I'm writing a song
Yeah.
or something.
Molly, where do you fall in the journaling camp? Are you a pro journaler, anti journaler, or ambivalent?
I would say pro journaler, but I don't journal all the time. I started journaling when I was in high school and I would journal every single night. I almost feel like that was because I didn't have like a phone or many other distractions. I miss just only having my notebook beside my bed. So sometimes I'll try to like keep all the screens and distractions outside of my bedroom and just keep my journal. But I found that like I think like during tough times in my life, I definitely turned to journaling a lot more just to process stuff. Also on tour when you just have so much time and there's nothing going on, sometimes I'll just journal. It's a really good stress relief for me. So I I think I wish I did it every single day, but I go through phases of doing it every day and then not doing it for a long time.
Do those ever turn into song ideas, or are those things separate for you?
If I am journaling and I come up with a cool line or like something that I think sounds cool, I'll write it in a different section of song ideas. But I don't really go back and read my journals. Kind of like Katie was saying, I want to be super unfiltered. So even the thought of myself reading it back later is embarrassing in a way. So I'm like, no one will read this ever again, not even me. And then I can like feel free to say whatever. But if I somehow stumble upon a little thing that I like, I'll write it down somewhere else.
So, Molly, what is that ritual? I'm interested in the rituals of writers, songwriters, novelists, regardless of the type of writing that they're doing. Um, what is that ritual like for you? Do you have an ideal time of day, place where you get your best writing done? Are there things you need to have with you to have an effect, besides the instrument, to have an effective, writing session?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I guess my most productive and effective writing sessions are when I have basically like just the minimum things that I need, like my guitar, some paper. Maybe I'll write. I like writing on my computer sometimes just because I can be faster and I have horrible handwriting, so it's easier to go back and read. But I try to just keep it again like distraction free. So maybe turning off the internet so I'm not getting like different notifications, turning off my phone, and just going in a room that's kind of dedicated towards being creative.
Is there a room? I know I have like a go-to chair. Is there a place, whether it's true or not, I feel like where the mojo is, where I just feel like this is what's happened before, so maybe it'll happen again. Do you have a place like that for you?
Yeah, I mean, I have like a room that ideally I would like to work in all the time, but like you, I kind of gravitate just towards my living room because it's the most comfy and I like it the most. So that's my go-to place is just like on my couch usually.
Time of day matter? Are you a morning or night person, or does that not matter?
I'm trying to make myself more of a morning person because I feel better all day if I'm like, oh, I was productive in the morning, but I'm like such a night person. I usually get like a creative burst at nighttime, but I'm trying to like retrain myself.
Um, yeah, Katie, how about you? What's that ritual? Do you have a ritual? How important is that ritual to your process?
I'm trying to get better at like having an actual ritual. It's super hard during quarantine because it's like, it sometimes like having a routine or a ritual, especially if it's the same every day with songwriting, gets a little monotonous for me. Like I have to break it up with like going on a walk or taking my dog to the park or like, and I'll be like writing lyrics while I'm like walking my dog. So it's like kind of I'm sort of like trying to write or at least think about songs like I'll, throughout the day, but I'm kind of like Molly, where I do get like these creative bursts, like kind of more at night. My girlfriend's like a morning person, so she'll wake up super early, and I sleep until like noon, and then I'll
Wow.
stay up till like 3 or 4 some nights, and just like be with my guitar. But yeah, I have like it's actually the room I'm in now. And I just have like a basic like interface microphone set up, and sometimes I'll just turn on Pro Tools and like kind of like mumble like a melody idea or whatever, and I'll maybe accidentally say some words that'll end up being the actual words. And it's nice to have, you know, a microphone and just like sort of sit. I literally would just like mumble for 3 minutes, like over a chord progression, and like listen back and be like, oh, that's actually like kind of cool. Like, I think I was saying this in that phrase or in that like part of the song. And maybe that'll turn into like the first line of the song. And then I think about it and kind of build from there. But
I also heard this from Jack Tempchin, who wrote some songs for the Eagles. He wrote "Peaceful Easy Feeling" and some other songs. And Jack Tempchin told me he and Glenn Fry had this. They had that mumbling voice, and they named it. They called it El Blurto, and El Blurto was that voice of nonsense words that came out. Like they would just, like you were saying,
blurt out stuff. Yeah.
Yes, blurt out words that eventually would become real words.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that's what you do.
That is what I do. Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, what you're trying to say is sort of always like underneath the surface. You just have to do like certain things to like shake it up and like become comfortable blurting things out without a filter. Like Molly was talking about that unfiltered kind of process of songwriting. That's like what I aim to do. Cause I do think that like stuff that you actively think about will make its way into the songs, and then, you know, you'll kind of be able to formulate a real structured, you know, song out of that, you know, but it definitely sometimes just starts from like blurting something out.
And I think you said something that I agree with, and that is that when I was a professor, I told my students, your writing process is always taking place. Like your writing process is taking place as you're eating, as you're sleeping, as you're walking, as you're swimming, right, as you're doing nothing. And if you look at it that way, I think it makes it less daunting. But if you approach the writing process, something only happens when you're sitting down, there can be a lot of anxiety. So are you getting, I guess, Molly, are you getting a lot of song ideas from when you're not sitting in front of when you're not actually composing? Do song ideas come to you when you're, you know, things that you see, things that you hear in your environment?
Yeah, I think like if I'm in the mindset, especially if I am writing a little bit each day and having intentional writing time, then my mind kind of goes into that songwriting zone. And then I have like this radar without even like just kind of subconsciously looking for song ideas throughout the day. And so I write them down. But yeah, I get a lot from reading, just things that pop into my head, stuff I see. And yeah, so that's the best when I can get into that mindset of looking for song ideas. And sometimes I'll even be like half asleep and like trying to work on lyrics, or like wake up and like I've dreamed some song idea. Usually they're bad, but every now and then they're not horrible.
Katie, do you have hundreds of voice memos? One songwriter told me that it was Brian Fallon. He told me that if any songwriter tells you that they ever go back to those voice memos, they're lying. He goes, I have hundreds of those. I never look at, I've never gone back. Yeah. So where are they? How often do you honestly go back to them?
I really hardly go back to them. Sometimes I go back to them when I'm like driving, you know, like instead of when I get sort of like burn out on like listening to music or podcasts or whatever, I'm like, I wonder like if there's anything good in there, or like when I'm on a plane, which hasn't been at all lately. But you know, when I like lose internet, I'm like, I wonder what I was thinking, like, you know, 6 months ago or whatever. And it could be cool, you know? But oftentimes, yeah, I do not go back. But I like what you're saying, Molly, about like sort of writing songs almost like as you're sleeping. I have literally like woken up in the middle of the night, think I'm like dreaming of the best song I've ever written, and I'm like mumbling it super like quietly into the phone to like not wake up my girlfriend. And then I'm like, what? I listen back, I'm like, what the like? I just end up deleting those because I'm like, that's not even English. Like, I don't know what I'm doing there. But it's pretty funny. Mm-hmm. I always feel like I write these great songs when I'm dreaming, and then I can't remember what the hell they're about.
I've like woken up crying because it was like the most beautiful song I've ever heard, and then I like mumble it and hear it back, and it's like so random and like
Really?
Have you heard that Courtney Barnett lyric that's like, and in my dreams I wrote the best song that I've ever written, can't remember how it goes.
Okay, Molly, so is your phone just filled with voice memos also, and how often do you go back to them?
Yeah, I have so many on my phone. I don't often go back to the like unnamed ones. If there's one that's like actually a song idea, I'll like give it a song name temporarily, and sometimes I go back to those. The only times I've also gone back to them on planes too, when you're just like bored and there's nothing else to do.
It's a good place to do
Yeah. The other times I do is when I'm like in a co-write with someone, maybe it's like a brand new co-write and I don't really know where to start. Sometimes I'll just like go through to see if there are any cool ones. Every so often there's one that I find that's like a hidden gem, but usually they're not that memorable.
Speaking of BJ Barham, he told me something. It's one of the most amazing responses I've ever gotten. BJ, and Katie, you may know this, but he told me he has an 80-page single-spaced Word document of all of his song ideas organized by theme and by emotion. So he'll have like 80, it's 80 pages.
Holy
constantly
crap.
going. 80 pages. And again, like he'll have like relationship will be the theme, and then the emotions are like happy relationship, sad relationship. And that's how he's got this incredible filing system that it blew my mind. Do you have anything?
I'm writing.
I don't expect anyone to have that.
I'll bring that up.
What's that?
All right, we're going to refer to your 80-page document, BJ. Well, let's see what you got.
It's on video. It's on. So he did say it. It's confirmed. But he said he's constantly adding to it, and that's how he goes back to look for song ideas.
Cool.
Katie, you mentioned movement, and this is something that I believe in, and a lot of songwriters have told me this too. How many song ideas they get when they are walking the dog, swimming. I've heard,
driving,
running,
which is
biking.
Dangerous.
Yes, right. But I interviewed Stone Gossard from Pearl Jam a few months ago, and he has this whole theory about literally, bipedal movement, how the cadence and the rhythm of your limbs actually contributes to song ideas.
Wow.
And some songwriters told me, one of them recently told me that they get a song idea from the turn signal, the time signature of the turn signal on his car.
Wow.
So I guess that's kind of a several part question, but do you get along with song ideas when you're not necessarily driving, but when you're walking or walking the dog, that, and then maybe just movement in general?
Yes. Yeah, I definitely write a lot of lyrics when I'm walking my dog. And maybe I'll have a melody in my head. Maybe I won't. Maybe they're just like, I'm just like writing lyrics about just what I'm thinking about. But I do find my brain is like just way more active when I'm moving. But yeah, I also, oddly enough, definitely write a lot of songs like in the car. I just feel like there's a lot of information, like when you're driving, there's a lot to take in. Like it's like fast paced, like people watching, like you see like someone on the side of the road, like begging for money or like, so, like there's just like a lot of information out there. And like, there's a lot of thoughts to have about those things and a lot of feelings that you get by just like taking it in. But yeah, I've actually like crashed my car before, like totaled my car writing a song. So I have to like be careful.
Wait, this is a thing? You actually totaled it?
Yes, I totaled it. So I was like, all right, I need to, because, I write lyrics on my phone. So it's like just as bad as like texting. I had to learn that like probably early on, but I crashed into another car, like at a 4-way stop. And I was like, God, that song wasn't even that good. Like, why did I?
So it didn't even make it to the album.
Didn't make it to the album. No. But hey, yeah, it's all right. It worked out okay. Everyone was fine, but I need to be careful when I'm writing songs and I'm driving.
Wow, that's a good story.
It's not that good of a story.
I've never heard that before. No, yeah, definitely. Let's make it very clear. That's not recommended.
Don't do it.
Molly, how about you? Do you get song ideas when you're moving, whether it's, walking or anything like that, or driving?
Yeah, I get a lot when I'm walking, not as many driving, although I have like, usually when I'm driving, I guess I'm listening to music, so I don't get as many while listening, but sometimes if I'm not, I'll get them while driving. But I'm like early on last year in the pandemic, I had a really, like, it was such a fun co-write where I was walking and coming up with lyrics, and I came up with a lot while I was walking and sent them to my friend, and by the time I had walked back home, he had like made a little track and like come up with a melody for them. That was so cool. So I think like something about the moving really does like free up my creative mind, I think, and makes me a bit more unfiltered because I'm not like focusing so hard on writing lyrics. So I think it kind of does the same thing as we were talking about with journaling, where you feel just kind of like your creative mind is open in a way.
I find that going out and walking is a great way when I'm stuck, when I feel like the words aren't coming anymore. So do you use that also as a way, when you find that, you're in a rut, do you find that exercise or walking is a way to kind of free yourself from that? Or if not, are there things that you do, techniques that you use when you find that you're stuck?
Yeah, I think walking, going on a walk, taking a break, like being active in general, I think just kind of like tapping into your body and yeah, just getting in tune with yourself can be good. I like to meditate or do a bit of yoga. But I think walking is great for that too.
Yeah. Katie, do you use techniques when you find that things aren't happening? Do you think it's good to push through or set it aside and do something else?
I think it depends. Like if it's the type of wall where you're like sitting there for 30, 40 minutes and you're stuck, like yeah, get out, drop the guitar, like go. I have a bike. I'll ride my bike and listen to music, like listen to another song that might give me an idea for the song I'm working on. Yeah, I feel like definitely listening to music gives me ideas more so when I'm stuck. Like just like remember why I love music and songwriting and listen to my favorite songwriters and go like, oh man, like that was cool how they like turned that phrase. Like I could, you don't necessarily steal like, but you hear it. You like sort of when you're kind of a student of songwriting, you hear how they get to certain moments in the song and how they do it.
Is there a Molly? Is there a song that stands out in anything that you've written? What was as being, I guess, the greatest struggle that was really hard for you to write? I don't mean emotionally, just it was hard to finish and you maybe gave up on, but you pushed through and you're glad that you did. Does one stand out as being like that one that was just a real struggle?
Let me think about that. I think like one on my first ever EP that I did, Good Enough is a song off of that EP. And that one, I remember writing it for such a long time because I really wanted like each verse to say a specific thing and like make the chorus mean specific things. And it was just hard to really find the exact right words to use in that song.
Katie, how about you? Is there a song that you just wanted to give up on, but you pushed through and you're glad that you did?
Yes. There was a recent song. It's called Look the Other Way, and I released it this summer. And I was, like, I just couldn't come up with a chorus. Like, I had all these verses that were sort of like, the first verse is about gentrification, like, just how cities get, family-owned businesses get torn down and, corporations kind of like take over. And then the second verse is about the government, and like the third verse I wrote last, and it's about George Floyd and like the protests and everything that's but I don't know, I think that was a time where I was feeling really overwhelmed by information. I think we all were. It's just like there's so many problems, like where do you start, like kind of and what do you do to not like contribute to the problem and to like help instead of hurt it. But yeah, I was staying in Idaho at my girlfriend's parents' house. We were staying there for like, I think it was like 3 weeks straight. And I was just literally like waking up at like 2 a.m. because I couldn't, like, I was like, I need to finish this song. And like just going to the bathroom, like lighting a candle, closing the door, and like just trying to get a chorus. And one night I did, and I was like, yes, that's what I'm trying to say. But it was really like, it was super difficult to get to. And I'm glad I did, because I ended up really, liking the song, and I knew I wanted to write something that kind of like met the moment, but it was so hard to articulate, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to tie these very different issues together into one cohesive topic, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you revise? How much revising do you do your lyrics, Katie?
It depends. I feel like when you write a verse or a chorus that you feel good about, generally, if I revise, it's like one word here or there, but I typically like can at least 4 or 5 lines together. Usually that's like a complete thought, you know, like I get it out kind of all at once. But as far as like arranging different, like, oh, this verse actually is the last verse, but like I do definitely like write in like breaths or like like 4 or 5 lines at a time that will stay together, you know. But as far as like piecemealing verses and choruses or whatever, I will like rearrange or like edit, you know, change a pronoun or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Molly, how about you? Do you do a lot of revising to your lyrics?
I do usually, like, before going in to record them, I'll go back to them because usually, at least in the last few years, what I've mainly done is like write the song, record it, have like a version of it, and then once I've decided that I like it, then I'll go back once there's been some space between writing it. Every so often, like, well, I guess with most songs, before I end up demoing them or whatever, I will have like a day or two where I'm thinking about them a lot and editing them, but then I kind of leave them for a while and then come back to them to make sure I'm saying everything I want to say before recording. So I do quite a bit of editing, I guess, and a lot of it is like changing one line or kind of listening and hearing which lines stand out to me or which lines make me cringe a little bit or whatever, and going back and changing those. So yeah, I love editing. Kind of. It also drives me.
No, I've never said that. That's great.
I'm too much of a.
I've never actually heard that. I love editing. I can't let that go and not pursue that.
Definitely.
So, why do you like editing so much?
OCD self. I just like the feeling of like really picking it apart. It kind of like, I think it drives me crazy, but it's also very satisfying once you have edited a song a few times.
It's like a puzzle, right? Like once you have like all of the pieces and the melody, you can kind of like ditch the guitar and like just be on the couch, like, you know, or wherever.
About it all day if you want. Like, what's that?
Yeah, like the melody's just repeating in your head. You're like, could I say another line there if I wanted? Yeah. No, I hear you. It can be satisfying when you have like the program and the sort of the form already built. It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I would worry that if you like editing so much, you could edit too much, right? I mean, at some point, you know, you could be doing too much and really change the original intent of the song, right?
Yeah, I think I try to keep old versions, and I think there are songs that I've kind of edited too much and then they've almost like lost what I liked about them, and either I'll like go try to find the original version or just kind of move on to a different song. But yeah, I've definitely spent a lot of time editing certain songs, and then in the end they've just like lost whatever magic they had at the beginning. So there's a balance.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, last question. Molly, we'll stick with you. I find that songwriters are voracious readers, and typically reading has a big influence on people's songwriting as well. So how much reading do you get to do, and who are some of your favorite authors, and what impact, if so, does that have on your songwriting at all?
Yeah, I'm not like, I love reading, but this year, especially, I feel like my just attention for reading books has gotten smaller. I think I've just been a little stressed out, and just because of everything happening. And but I've been reading an amazing book called Overstory that I love. I read some Joan Didion earlier this year that was really inspiring. She's one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah. Who wrote Overstory?
I'm trying to remember. I can't remember the guy's name who wrote it, but that's an amazing book. I'm like slowly making my way through it this year. Yeah, I do love reading. I found in the past 2020 was a weird reading year for me, where I would like get 100 pages into a book and then stop and move on to the next book. I think my attention span just got smaller or something, unfortunately.
Katie, how about you? How much do you read, and who are some of your favorite authors?
My attention span is also very short, so that's kind of also how I read. Audible has been like kind of my best friend, but I'll do Audible and then I'll also either have like a physical copy or like a copy on my phone list, so I'm like literally reading along while I'm listening. I did that with like Jeff Tweedy's autobiography, Let's Go So We Can Get Back. Great book. Just Kids, Patti Smith. I actually did read like the physical copy of that one. That was awesome. But yeah, I mean, Patti Smith, that book, just like, she's such a visual writer. I feel like that kind of like changed my view of like, instead of writing of like, I feel this, I was doing this, like, tell me where you are. And that kind of like, she's really good at just like putting you in a place. Like you read a paragraph and you know exactly where she is, what she's like, what does it smell like? What does it like sound like? Who's, if she's like at a coffee shop or a cafe, like she'll just paint every vivid picture of that scene. And I feel like I've been trying to do that more like in my songs. But yeah, I kind of like will pick up a book and read it for like a second and then I'll get distracted or something in the book will like inspire me and I'll like pick up my guitar, so I get very distracted with reading, which is why Audible is like, is good for my ADD brain. Like if I'm on a plane, I'm sitting there, I'm listening to the book, I'm not, my focus is on that one thing, but typically I just have like a million books like on my desk and I'll just like pick up and read something and then put it down,
And that's it for the latest episode of Songwriters on Process. Don't forget, you can find all of my interviews with over 200 songwriters on my Songwriters on Process website at songwritersonprocess.com, going all the way back to 2010. You can read them, watch them, or listen to them. So until next time, thanks for listening.